Hello and welcome. This is an FBA-sponsored video conference and interview of Western District of Missouri Magistrate Judge Jill Morris. And I have with me this morning Ethan Lang, who is currently the Vice President of our FBA chapter, and I am the President-elect of our FBA chapter. And then, of course, you also see on your screen Judge Jill Morris, who we are very happy to have present with us this morning and who has graciously agreed to be interviewed. This project came about as a result of an idea of our esteemed FBA president, Tony Mativi, who suggested that we interview Judge Morris, since she is new to the bench, to help our FBA members become acquainted with Judge Morris. So I want to thank her for being willing to be interviewed, and I will just give a brief introduction because hopefully our questions in this interview will do the best job of acquainting you with Judge Morris. But prior to coming on the bench, very recently, she has the great distinction of coming on about the same time as COVID began to hit us. So she's had to deal with that. But prior to coming on the bench, she was the director of what's known as the MAP program for the Missouri Bar Association, the Mediation and Assessment Program. And prior to that, she was in private practice for a period, and then also clerked for District Judge Nanette Lowry. So she's had considerable experience and is very well qualified for this position. And we are very enthused to have an opportunity to interview her today. So welcome, Judge Morris. And I think Ethan is going to have the first question for Judge Morris.
Very good. Thank you, Judge James. So kind of you. And Ethan, it's a pleasure to be with you both here today. Thank you.
Thank you for letting us interview you. So Judge Morris, my first question is, where did you grow up?
I grew up in the greater Kansas City area, actually in Blue Springs. I grew up there and attended public school in Blue Springs all the way through high school.
And then we'll stick with the softball questions. What do you do for fun?
Oh, I love to play with my family. I love to be outdoors, hike. I love it when I can get a few minutes of time to myself and read a great book, or be outside and attempt some gardening or landscaping or something like that. And I also love to travel.
Are you reading any good books right now?
I'm trying to get through a couple of them right now, but I have to say the last several months I have been honing in on learning this job. But I loved Michelle Obama's book. That was a great read fairly recently. And there are a couple others that I'm a couple chapters in, but need to pick back up and probably start again from the beginning.
And continuing down that line, do you have a favorite lawyer or legal movie?
I would have to say my favorite legal movie would be To Kill a Mockingbird. Fabulous book by Harper Lee as well, of course. But I had the pleasure of watching that movie again fairly recently during the pandemic with my family. And, the family was a little bit surprised that they were going to be watching something in black and white. But it was such a joy to see that again. And so many important lessons in that movie about humanity, about due process, about treating each other with respect. So whether it's from the eyes of Boo Radley or Scout or Atticus Finch, I just think there are so many important takeaways from that movie. So that's one near and dear to my heart and that I've seen again recently.
Definitely a great message there. Well, moving back to the more academic, you might say, could you tell us where you graduated from law school?
Certainly. I went to University of Missouri, Columbia, so MU Law.
And
I did my undergrad there as well. Yes, I sure did. And actually, Judge Lowry was my law professor at MU. So I got to know her a little bit in undergrad through some student organizations and leadership activities, but had the privilege of having her as one of my law professors at MU. And then she went on the bench right as I was graduating in the mid-90s.
Very good.
Judge Morris, why did you choose the practice of law?
You know, I had early admission to law school going into undergrad, so I already knew I had a spot at MU if I chose that path. And it was really important to me to be self-supporting, to be able to be independent. And I was putting myself through school, and I thought that the law, even though I'm the first lawyer in my family, but I thought that would be a field that would allow me to harness a lot of my interest to try to help others, also to obtain employment, and to do so with an advanced degree. And I knew I wanted to further my education, but that since it was on my dime, I needed to figure out how to do it efficiently and be able to enter a field and hit the ground running. So I'm really thankful that that's the field I chose.
And earlier when you were talking about law school, you had mentioned Judge Lowry. And so my next question is did you have a mentor when you entered the practice of law? And if so, who and what did you learn from them?
Certainly. So Judge Lowry was one of my very first mentors since I clerked for her my first year out of law school before entering practice. And I certainly learned so many things from clerking with her. Some of the things I learned directly from her, some of the things I learned from the many attorneys we saw come before her. But I always will always remember how important it is to be prepared. And she taught me that very early on, just by example of how prepared she is for everything. And also the professionalism, respect, and that rarely should there be a gray area or cutting it too close to the line, that it's important to take the high road and to really do what you know and believe is right. I had other great mentors in the practice early on in my career. I'm afraid if I mention names, I would leave out too many important people, but some great folks. Who took me to trial as second chair, or would read my deposition transcripts and notate ways to ask better questions, so that the summary judgment motion would would be even more solid, and just amazing things like that, or would take me to preliminary injunction proceedings, or set me free, to go handle trials early on, or depositions. So some great folks I learned from, at Armstrong Teasdale and other places where I started out.
That's a great segue to our next question, which is, tell us a little bit about either the expertise or nature of your practice before going on the bench, and also the nature of your work on MAP before you came on the bench.
Sure. So early on, I certainly did a little bit of everything. I was working for as many partners as it seemed like as there were in the office. And I got to do everything from trade dress infringement cases, personal injury, torts, contracts, gas explosion cases, truly just a little bit of everything, as well as employment law. And I knew at a certain point I really wanted to hone in and learn an area or two more in depth, as opposed to doing everything. Doing everything was a great way to really hit the ground running and get a sense of litigation and trial work and that sort of thing. But I knew I wanted to focus more on one area, and that ended up being employment law, which I really, really enjoyed. So, starting, I would say late 90s, a little bit of everything, starting probably very late 90s, early 2000s, I focused solely on employment and labor law. And that was an amazing path and area of the law. I did some teaching, training, trial work, and then after being one of the partners, I was at Armstrong, and then I was one of 4 partners to open the Kansas City office of a national labor employment boutique firm, and did that for more than a handful of years, and then started running the mediation program at the Western District of Missouri Federal Court. So with our ADR program here, it had a long, great history. We were one of the first 5 pilot programs in the country as part of the Civil Justice Reform Act changes being rolled out in all the federal district courts. And in that role, I had the opportunity to oversee all the cases in our federal court, referred to mediation at a very early stage. And I also got to mediate a fair number of times each and every week. So that was such a rewarding opportunity to meet with so many attorneys here and frankly across the country, and some international attorneys as well. And to see the different disputes and problem solving and ways to work things out, or ways to make really informed decisions about this is the case to take to trial. So that was my path before coming to the bench.
As a magistrate judge, do you anticipate that you will do some mediations, or how is that handled in the Western District?
Yes. I've already done several mediations since becoming a magistrate judge here, and I will continue that. Our mediation program does refer cases to our magistrate judges and our bankruptcy judges for early mediations. And then our magistrate judges also handle eve of trial mediations. So I've had the opportunity to handle both eve of trial and early mediations since taking this new role in early August. And I'm so glad I get to continue doing that. I truly,
That's right up your alley.
It is. And, the skill set from that translates beautifully, I think, to being on the bench as well.
And I presume that you're doing so much employment work in private practice, that also got you into federal court quite a bit. Is that correct?
It did. I was in federal court quite a bit, although with a lot of the changes in the Missouri law at that point in time, actually a fair amount of the work was in state court. Kansas, always federal, but in Missouri, it was a hybrid. It just depended on the state of the law at the time. But for a period there, unless it directly fell under the FMLA or the ADA or the ADAA, it was in state court. So a good variety of both.
Given your broad experience, why did you decide you wanted to become a magistrate judge?
Ethan, good question. I had always thought from seeing and working with Judge Lowry and seeing the rest of the bench here and all of the amazing judges, on both sides of the state line and in other districts that I had appeared in front of, that becoming a judge was really the pinnacle of a legal career. So I was very inspired by that idea. But frankly, we hadn't had an opening here in Western District of Missouri in over a couple decades. Then all of a sudden there were a couple spots opening up, and I began to think about that again. But I knew that I would really be super excited about the opportunity to be honored, and just what an amazing position to be able to see so many different types of disputes, to bring a different, unique perspective, and also, to be a role model for my 2 daughters. So I was really honored to be selected. There were so many amazing candidates. So I still pinch myself.
That's great. Along that line, what, if anything, has surprised you most about being a judge?
Right when I started, I think the biggest initial surprise was the incredible volume of cases given the backlog from the pandemic as well as intersecting with all the work created from Operation Legend. So just massive amount of search warrant requests and criminal cases and that sort of thing right at the beginning. So that made for a very quick learning curve, and that was the initial surprise. Now, I am just struck daily by the variety. So, even if I've done a certain proceeding over 100 times already, still each and every day, it seems like there's some new twist or something new and interesting. And that's frankly exhilarating. It can be challenging, it can be tough, but I love learning new things. I love the challenge. I love the variety.
And not having done any criminal work, I guess, before you came on the bench, has that been a major undertaking, taking on those types of cases?
Oh, absolutely. And I very much anticipated that it would be. So, I tried to do tons of self-study, hundreds and hundreds of hours of observation, watching proceedings, reading, doing online study, coursework, and that sort of thing. But the attorneys in the criminal bar have been fabulous on both sides, and we've really got a great group of attorneys who frequently come before the magistrate judges. So it's been an absolute pleasure, and certainly very much a learning curve, but one that I'm working hard on and feel I've had a fair amount of practice so far, even though I'm just several months in.
How
Oh,
would you estimate your time breaks down between civil versus criminal matters?
Sure. So at this point in time, probably 90+% is criminal at this moment. Some of that's just the nature of the docket that I inherited, but we're building civil cases, consent cases. So those are coming in, and I think we'll have a different percentage balance, several months from now, I expect. But it's been nice to focus, primarily on that criminal area for now, and then also a smattering of mediations cases assigned for that as well. So,
Judge Morris, what advice would you give lawyers who appear before you?
So I think to always know your case. I know whether I'm serving as a mediator or as a judge, I do everything I can to get up to speed ahead of time. So I really appreciate it when attorneys come before me and they really are familiar with their case. They know what happened, they know when it happened, they know the law. They know their facts, and that just makes everything work in a way that it really should, where everything flows smoother, everyone's getting great representation. I think it enables me to do a better job. I'm always a little concerned if someone doesn't know what happened, and I've read it and I maybe have a sense of that. So know your case. And it seems like an obvious thing, but but when you see that happen, it really does make a difference. Also, always take the high road. Be professional, be courteous. Again, that's something that should go without saying, but sometimes folks take the bait, and really taking the high road and giving everyone the benefit of the doubt, certainly at first and certainly in court and in briefing, makes a difference. So those would be kind of my two main pieces of advice for lawyers appearing in front of me.
If, but for the COVID restrictions and problems created by COVID, what sorts of matters, Judge Morris, would you anticipate inviting lawyers in to your chambers or to your courtroom for you to see them or hear arguments or just discuss a case?
Sure. But for all of our virtual circumstances right now, I very much think close to 100% would be handled in person in the courtroom. I'm a big believer in in-person contact. There's certainly a time and a place for an exception, But you know, I know how effective in-person mediations were, seeing that, you know, day in, day out. And you know, again, there might be need for an exception, and we're certainly seeing the power of the virtual platform right now. So perhaps there will be some carryover, hard to know. But I think in person has a lot of value. I think it gives an opportunity for everyone to have a different level of interaction, whether it be with, you know, the opposing counsel, whether it be seeing someone in person and appreciating their circumstances, even if you're advocating for the other side, just realizing there's more than one perspective to everything. So I think there's a lot to be said for in person.
So my next question is not necessarily limited to your new job as a magistrate judge, but during the pandemic, have you picked up any new skills or any talents?
You know, I certainly became very familiar with Zoom early on, and had lots of great help from my family members figuring that out. So whether it was figuring out how to do a picture for virtual background, or having each family member in a different room in the house so we could practice, because I was mediating on Zoom pretty early on, and then also watching other criminal proceedings as I awaited my background check process and the like. So that's, you know, that's a more technical thing, but it's been really valuable. But in terms of fun things, you know, I've had time to do a little more baking and cooking, some online bake-offs, you know, contests, whether school related or friends and family related, and lots of redesigning areas. So indoor, outdoor, you name it. I don't know if all of those things are necessarily new skills, but maybe newfound time or newfound environment to pick up on those things.
How did you perform in the online bake-offs?
You know, we've done pretty well. Some of it's just supervising, but you know, it's pretty fun to make a cake that looks like a cheeseburger. You know, what's better than that, right? So,
Right.
Very impressive.
Well, I think the other little people get more credit for that, but it's fun to help. Well, how can we make lettuce out of frosting, right? So.
And is your chambers completely decorated and furnished?
We are pretty close. I'd say about 98% there. So that's been a really special project to work on. Huge responsibility, but really meaningful. I have two amazing law clerks, amazing staff. So I think everyone is getting situated, and everything's pretty designed and filled out. I'm still tinkering with a few things, getting a couple things on the wall, but we're about there.
Well, it's been great to visit with you, Judge Morris, and get to know you a little better. I think we're at the end of our questions, but Ethan, anything more you can think of?
No, I don't have anything further. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's been great visiting both with you, Ethan, and with you, Judge James. So thank you so much for taking the time, and I very much look forward to future events with the organization, and certainly getting to see more folks in the months and years ahead.
Good luck to you in your work as a judge, and again, thank you. And I hope, on a personal note, we can get together for lunch once COVID subsides.
I would very much enjoy that. That sounds great. So I know, and I'm so blessed here in the Western District of Missouri to have great colleagues. So and Judge James, you as well, and some of the other magistrate judges in DCAN have been so warm and welcoming and supportive. So I've really appreciated all of the suggestions and insights and support. It's felt really good.
Well,
Thank you.
We're thrilled to have you on the bench with us.
Thank you
very much. And thank you, everybody who tunes into this video interview. We hope you find it helpful.